this is at the core of what we're doing. And what I would like to add is that our mission in the World Bank has just changed recently. We were always having our mission is to free the world of poverty, have inclusive, shared prosperity, and we have now added the livable planet. This is to signal to the world that the World Bank is very serious about dealing with the planetary problems, especially on climate change.
A lot of the focus that we've been seeing is on the end goal of the energy transition, which is renewables, and for good reason. But I think that the journey to get there is just as important. And in that journey, we believe that natural gas is absolutely critical to delivering the end goal itself, if we want to have a smooth one. And so we are in the business of liquefied natural gas. We believe that it's going to be relevant and the demand will still be there way beyond 2050. We believe for various reasons, the intermittency of some of the renewables. We believe that the sort of high intensity heat generation that certain industries need will continue to require natural gas. So it will remain with us for quite some time. However, we also believe that because it is a hydrocarbon, we can't continue to do natural gas the way that we've always done. And so how do we decarbonize the natural gas system? How do we decarbonize the value chain for natural gas? And that is our focus. There's a lot that can be done, and companies like ours are looking at it, doing it in across a spectrum of ways. We're looking at being able to actually measure and know what we're producing. And so measurement is absolutely key. We're looking at ways in which we can avoid. We're looking at ways in which we can reduce, we can mitigate, and then ultimately we can sustain what we've put in place as well. And so there's a lot that we have done already and are continuing to do around energy efficiency, which is absolutely key when you have a 22 and soon to be 30 million ton per annum plant for LNG. And by the way, LNG is not the only product that we produce. We also produce propane and butane. That for us is another key element in the energy transition. And so even though it's a hydrocarbon, we are deploying all of our production of butane and propane, which is 500,000 tons per annum, into the Nigerian domestic market to displace charcoal, firewood, and all kinds of other solid fuels that are being used, which are not only more polluting to the environment, but are damaging to health. And so the issues of indoor air pollution, the issues with all kinds of respiratory diseases are things that we are tackling already simply by displacing those worse fuels or polluting fuels, so to say. But if I come back to LNG, in terms of decarbonization, a lot of the interventions that relate to things like energy efficiency, we can afford those, right? And we're doing so already. But the challenge comes when we face some of the more difficult. So when we look at our plan to net zero, we've realized that there are certain critical investments and technologies that we need to deploy, such as CCUS. So for carbon capture and storage, it is high cost. It's difficult to demonstrate to my shareholders the NPV, and the returns on that. And so those are the areas where we're looking at financing. But it's also where we're facing a lot of challenges with being able to raise the necessary financing. And so, to be frank, we have engaged with some multilaterals, and I won't name names, who have essentially said, no, we're not dealing with you. Talk to the cement factories, we'll talk to, these other guys here, but not natural gas, not hydrocarbons, right? We've met with some others whom we're engaging at the moment and discussing with. But I think one of the biggest issues that we face has to do with risk perception. There's genuine risk, but there's also risk perception. And I think that too often there's a blanket view of risk, particularly in Africa, which then is almost a blocker to investment. We've demonstrated that we can meet your requirements because we don't have a problem actually raising project finance for our standard projects. We're currently investing in a full value chain $10 billion project. But that's because the returns will meet what the market wants. When we're talking about either renewables or the energy transition, it's a whole different ballgame. The returns are much lower. So how do we attract the financing for that? And that is the challenge. So what we're told is, yeah, the risk is high and so on and so forth. But we believe that we can sit down and actually have a sensible conversation where we're able to mitigate all of those elements. And I can speak to some of the risks, that are raised, right? It's typical. So the view is that renewables aren't, are higher risk than some other investments in general, but particularly in Africa, right? The view is that the policies and the regulations are not there, and that if they are there, they may change or they may be reversed, etc. The view is also that when you put in the investment, you don't get your returns, and so often the question is, where's the off taker, and so on and so forth. And so we've said we can demonstrate that we are the off taker in on the CCUS. So the offtake is there. Guaranteed payments, it's there as well. And so we can actually put together a holistic project that can demonstrate this. In the ability to access the financing, I believe that there has to be a lot more creativity and a lot more innovation that is brought to the table. The traditional approaches just simply will not work. Unfortunately, I have to also say that if we go by simply the World Bank approach, which is let's build the governance and let's build the institutions and let's look, 15 years from now, we'll still be having the same conversation. And so to your question, how do we accelerate that, right? It is critical that we look at what can we do today. And I believe that private sector is what cracks that nut. It has to be through private sector, because private sector is able to give you some of those conditions that will take decades for a developing country government to be able to put in place. And so how do we bring these together so that we have both public, private, and the multilaterals and the financing entities together to a table to say, how do we share this risk? Who is going to bear what risk? And how do we enable this to happen?
I think your point's very well made. I must say, in my experience, I've been working with different parts of the world for a very long time. Thank you very much, everybody, for being with us. We're done. Thank you.
Stage this way.